Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, or Saturday evening, depending on your time zone, Q&A session. So the way that this works is that, and a few announcements before we get started, is that I'm trying to do this as often as I can. I think the 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is probably a good mix, considering all the time zones. In the comments section, we get a lot of, let me just flash this up to you. We get a lot of how-tos or questions on approaches or capabilities. Can the technology do this? I'm trying to solve this type of problem. What I've done, I created and I'm actually walk you through how to set something this up. And this is going to help highlight the difference between a Microsoft form and a Power Apps form. And what we're going to do is that I'm going to share this link out. And this is real time. This is in production on my tenant. If you have any questions or any ideas on solutions, because I'm actually looking for a lot of material to create solutions on Power Platform and create tutorials on those solutions on the Power Platform, just to kind of get the pulse of what's out there in the wild and what are some of the things that you all are facing, either with your organization or for a particular client if you're a consultant, or maybe things that you're trying to do on your own within your own lab or dev tenant environment or wherever the case may be. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste this in the chat. So go ahead and use that to complete it. And what I will try to do at the end of, or in the description field of most of my videos, I would try to post information on how you can use this link to submit your information. Okay? All right, so let's talk about how do you create something like this. So here I am in the demo tenant. And what you want to do is, first off, just go ahead to Microsoft Forms to complete the form. And this is going to highlight where you can create a form. And these are super, super simple to create. So let me just go into new. I'm actually logged in with 2 sessions in this browser. And then I'm going to shorthand a lot of this just for, saving on time. So let's just say, Power App idea, and leave that as a question mark, and just say, like, this is the description of like your form header. Have an idea, post it here, right? And then I click add new. So now with the add new, it's going to ask me what type of fields do I want. So I need a description field. I need one for their email address. I need one for their name. And I also need one for, and this would be a choice of different technologies that they're using. And to put these in order, I can use these up and down arrows. So here I can just say something like brief description of the solution or idea. And then because this is going to be a multi-line, that's what the long answer option is. And this is required, right? That's the whole gist of this form. The other one is going to be technologies used. And then here I can just highlight like Power Apps, and then Power Automate. And then we can do something like SharePoint, so on and so forth, right? So I can just keep completing that out, and this should be required. And I can also, if I don't list the technology that they're considering for the solution, I can put another option, and this will automatically, if they select other, provide them with a text field so they don't complete that. The other one would be to get their information, so I'll just say, full name, and I want that to be required. And then the most important one would be their email address in the event there are questions, I can have that required. And then I go to the theme, and then put this in a nice theme background, and then preview it. And this is cool, right? And now we're ready to rock and roll. So in a matter of seconds, I have a form that they can fill out compared to like Power Apps. And Power Apps is not long to do, especially if you have the right strategy on how to pull it off. It's not long to fill out at all or to create. And that's relevant depending on how complex your solution is going to be. So now I want to go into the share, and this is the most important piece because I'm posting this outside of my tenant, meaning that people that need to fill this out are not going to authenticate with Office 365. This is just going to be a generic form, and you have several options on how to share that. So, but the most important one is to say anyone can respond. And note, by selecting anyone at the time of this video may limit what your capabilities are. And I think attachments is one that's on the Microsoft roadmap that they're trying to allow anyone outside the organization to submit an attachment with their form. If I kept this as the option that says people in my org, then the attachment option would be available to me. So understand that, depending on how wide you make the scope of this form would determine what features and capabilities that you have exposed to. So I'm gonna say anyone, and I'm gonna just do a shortened URL, and then I don't want to share this as a template or anything like that. And then I can share this. So I can now copy this and share this out. So now if I go into incognito mode, again, just to confirm that I can use this without, actually, let me kill that. I had an incognito session already in play. So here I'm in incognito mode. I use that shortened URL, and then here's my form, and then they can fill it out, okay? Again, outside of the organization. This has a beautiful story with interacting with users outside of your organization compared to a Power Automate or a Power Apps form. Okay, so now that I have that, the other piece is going to be I can set some additional settings here, and I can set this to only be open or be able to accept responses within a certain time period. And I can also, and this could be important, I can also receive an email notification when I receive a response, right? But it's going to be, so this is fine. So that way I'm alerted when there's a response, so on and so forth. But the most important thing, I think the most interesting piece of this is to have this information shared inside of a SharePoint list. So now let's go and do that. So here I go into Power Automate, and I create a new flow. And this is going to be, I'm going to put a trigger on this to when a form request is submitted. So let me just filter on the triggers to for a new response for a Microsoft form. And let's just call this PA ideas to SP list, right? And then we hit create. So once I do that, I get my standard trigger. It allows me to pick a form, and this is going to be the form that it realized that me as the current user I have access to. And this is the one we just created. If I don't have this, here's another pro tip. You can go to, especially if someone shares a form with you, you can go and grab this form ID, which is in the URL in this form ID. And we know that query string parameters and all that other stuff with the URL, so you know where to start and where to stop. You can then go into that, grab the form ID, and then paste that information there in the event that IntelliSense does not find the form that you're trying to target. Once you have that, you go into new, you have to, now that you have this wired up, you have to grab the responses of the form. And in our case, the response that trigger this trigger. So here we're going to filter our actions on the Microsoft form, if I can spell it correctly. And there's only one action currently. So this is just going to be get response details. Again, I need that form ID. So let me do custom value, drop that form ID in there. And then response ID is going to be off of this guy. So let's grab that. That's the only option in the list. And then I do a create item. So before I do that, let me just save this because I don't have a list yet. And actually, I do. I can find one, but I want to build this with you, right? So here we get, I don't know what that is. So here, let's switch over to SharePoint. Let's go to, trying to see if I have a bookmark that's going to land us where we need to go. Let's just go to the Tesla homepage. And again, here's another really interesting tip. And I don't know how many of you all are doing this already, but I tend to create subsites for my Power App solution. So if I'm doing like an issue tracker or a truck tracker, or maybe I don't know, like a VM management system or whatever tracking system or response or request system I'm dealing with, I love to create a subsite just for that particular solution. So let me just go right here while we're on the root site. I'm gonna create a subsite. And the reason why I do this is that it gives me more control, and it helps with security and permission management. So here I'm gonna do PI ideas. Let's just do this here. And what I'm gonna select the modern team site with no M365 group, since this is a sub-site and not a site collection. So I'm not gonna get all the fanciness that I would normally with if this is a sub-site. And then I'm gonna do unique permissions, and I'm gonna configure my navigation as such. So I don't want to inherit the parent or anything like that, because with the modern site, especially in a sub-site scenario, it does not do a great job with inheriting the parent navigation. So here I'm okay. This is creating new security groups just for this particular site, and I'm okay with that. Click OK, and now I'm ready to rock and roll. So here I got a modern look of a sub-site, right, with some limited information, but for the most part, this works out great. So now what I can do, I can go here, create a list just to hold all this information from my MS form. And I'm already having a title. So let me do this. Let's just say ideas received or something like that. And this is going to show on the left nav. So we're going to be good to go there. So once I have that, I have to deal with this title column, right? So that's out of the box. So let's just repurpose that. And I have to go to list settings to rename it, because if I rename it right there in the view, it just changed the column name in that view and not the column name as referenced in all my other Power App applications. So here I just want to name this to full name. That's going to be the full name there without other information we captured. We also captured the description, right? So that's the idea. So let's just put this as a description. And this is going to be multi-line text. I'm okay with that. We also capture their email. So that's going to come over as a single line text. What else did we capture? We also capturing, the technologies used. And I'm going to actually dump the selected technology into a single line text versus a choice value. I guess I could do choice value, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to use a single line text. So let's just do technology. And that's going to be single line. So now we're ready to rock and roll. So now that I have this, and this is on the PA ideas under it's a sub-site. And if I go back here, I actually need to save this. Why is this? Let me see. Let me X this out. Let's see if it'll allow me to save it, because I need to save this. And hopefully it recognizes let's see how far we can get. It recognizes my new site. So I'm going to do create item. And I have the PA ideas here. That's my new site. There's my new list. And then I'm ready to rock and roll. So now I have, under this create item, it's a simple mapping exercise, right? So now with full name, so this get response details is having a problem. What's the deal here? It's having a problem with get response details. Maybe my form ID is not correct. There we go. I don't know. Maybe I had an extra space in the form ID. But anyway, so here are all my responses from that Microsoft form. Now I do the full name. I get the description that they have. I grab the email address submitted. And then I get the technology stack that they're using. And I just save all that information there. So now if I save this, hopefully all my errors go away. Good. And now I can go to let me refresh this. This is my Power App. So let's just say I want to, let's say, learn how to create Power App with many forms or something like that, right? So now I just do that. This is going to be Power App, and then my name, and then my email, right? And then hit submit, right? So now that that's submitted, again, incognito mode outside of my tenant using Microsoft Forms. And if I go to my SharePoint site inside of my tenant, once that, if everything's wired up correctly, give it 3, 2, 1. Nope, nothing. Refresh. I love when data comes in without a refresh. Oh no, we have a problem, I think. Let's go back out here, hit OK. There's a problem with my trigger. Yeah, for some reason that form ID is not working. I have an issue with this one too. All right, so let me save that. I don't know. I have to research and see why that form ID is not working. All right, so here, let me go back to submit another request, blah, 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 blah. And I'm putting in the valid email because another cool thing that you can do, you can actually send a nice confirmation email, right? And that's just going to be our standard because now what we're doing, we're in Power Automate. So, you know, the same that we have, there we go, there's my blah, blah, blah. So the same information in technology tooling, right, with all the actions and connectors and all this other fun stuff, you can now build this out very similar to what we've been doing with Power Automate. And that's why I love this model and I love this decoupling model, because once you do this action and this action that says, these are the special things because I'm gathering information using MS Form, everything after that, I'm back into my wheelhouse to do whatever I'm used to doing. Email confirmations, approvals, notifications, ... right? Now, here's the beauty of it. Now, this is one of the questions that came up throughout the week. If I have a form or a list, how do I create multiple forms into this one list? And this could be eye-opening for some of us, because now that I have this gathering in the list, that doesn't prevent me from now going into creating a Power App for internal, right? And now I can have two scenarios. I can have a scenario to where I'm capturing information from users outside of the org, and now I can have a different scenario, especially if I want to make the experience more relevant for people who are authenticated. I can now go into create a blank canvas app. Let's just do tablet mode. Let's just say Power App idea, right? Hit create. And now I can capture this information from users within the organization, right? Because I don't need to ask them for their name if they're inside the organization and authenticated. I don't need to ask for the email if they're inside the organization and authenticated, because I know how to capture that information, right? So it just makes this a much better experience. So now what I can do, I can go to add data. And let's say, let's go find our list. So this is going to be a SharePoint connector. We're going to use this guy. These are PA ideas. That's the last site I was in. That's the list we just created. So now we're ready to rock and roll. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and bring a form. I always use the edit form, right? Because it gives you more flexibility. You have two options, edit and display. I can make an edit form feel like a display form, but I can't make a display form feel like an edit form. So if I select display, it locks me in and I'm not future-proof for other scenarios that may hit my way. So now let's just go into image, because I have a lot of real estate. And what I tend to do is use an image or, just something pretty to dress it up to kind of take account for this real estate. So here, let me just go add a quick image from my local device. And then once we have this, I change this to field so we can push it up. And then for this guy, I change the data source to that list. Now understand, because I brought this in raw, I brought this in, manually. It wasn't generated for me when I created the Power App. There's another setting, and I always tend to forget this. There's another setting on this form that you must set. Now, if you go to the item property, tell this defaults item received, and this just say for this particular form, I'm creating a new record. That's exactly what that means. Now, once I have that, you know me, I don't deal with styling in this way to where I'm coloring all these other components on the form. I'm gonna go in with a generic thing, which kind of gives me a nice generic or canvas to paint and for branding. And then next thing I'm gonna do, maybe I'll just do single column with this one. What does a double look like? A single column. So we're gonna do a single column layout. Again, I don't need all that real estate for this form. So maybe I can do this, split hairs with the spacing or what have you. But the description, I do need this to be a multi-line text box. So let me just change that here. And then here's the difference. I don't need to know their full name. Really, all I need to know is a description and the technology. There's no attachments here, so let's get rid of that. Yeah, all I need to know. So I don't need this. So hold on, let me do this. So let me collapse this. All I really need is description and technology. So let's do this. All right. Now, here's the trick. Because and full name is my title, so it's going to force me to use that. The trick is I know this information from the current user, so I'm going to populate it. So let me go now to the data card value, which is going to be the value for this email. Let me just rename this. So let's just call this V email. And then I need to go to the data card for the full name. And then I use this text box input here and just call this V full name. Now, once I have these set, I just need to set the default value. Instead of this coming from parent, meaning that this is a new item, this is really meant for if I'm editing or, if I'm editing the existing item. So I don't need this. So here, let me unlock it and override it. So the email is going to be simple. It's going to be our magic user method .email. That's going to be the current user's email. We're going to populate that for them. And then the same is true for this guy. Let's unlock it because we're overwriting it. And the username or the full name is going to be the current user dot full name. Very simple. Now that we're populating this in, let's hide it because we don't need the user to interact with it. So we hide it from the board. We don't want to delete it because we need it for our system, but we just hide it. Now that I have this, I can dress this up, put a rectangle on here with some really simple branding, right? And we know how to do this. So I just drop this in here and then get a nice text label. So that way that my form has a name, right? And then we stretch this out. I default to like the 20s. So let's do 24. Let's update the text value here. Let's just do something called Power Apps Idea or something like that. And now what we want to do is make this a semi-bold, make that bright, give it the Tesla red. And again, here's the pro tip to prevent flickering, right? Because if I do this in preview mode, as soon as I mouse over that, you see that color change. That's what I call the flicker. And that's color changing because of the hover. We don't want that. So what we do is we change the hover color, click on that, and there is this new method, relatively new, called self, meaning that the current control, and you can grab a value from one of the current control's properties. So whatever the fill color is set to, that's what we're going to set this hover color to. And the same is press. So if they come up here and click it for whatever reason, we're going to sell that. We want the press color to be the fill color, and that gets rid of that flicker. So now if we go here, click it, mouse over it, hover over it, it all stays the same color. All right, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and drop in our buttons. And again, if you know me, this is my standard. This is my go-to, right? So now I have a submit button, and I dress this up first. Hold up, be careful, make sure that form control is not overlapping that. I dress this up first, so give it the Tesla red. We call it submit, so that way they can submit the form. And then we let's copy this. Oh no, I usually throw a radius on here, so maybe like a radius 3, border radius 3, just to kind of soften the edge a little bit. Not too much, because you don't want it to look like a peel. And then once you have that, I screwed that up. Control C, Control V, copy it, grab it. And what I tend to do is do the inverse, right? So I make the border color the Tesla red, and I make the fill color the white, and then I make the font color, I don't know, maybe the Tesla red as well, right? And this is going to be our cancel. Very elegant, very simple. These are tips and tricks. You won't see a lot of color. I keep this neutral gray. I let the image do its thing. I brand this, and we're ready to rock and roll, right? I'm not coloring or setting colors. I mean, you just set yourself up for a maintenance nightmare and not so popular for the developer or the app maker coming behind you. because now, every small change, they have to do this elaborate setup because we went crazy with the branding. Most of the time, this is brand enough, right? And the business users love it, and we're ready to rock and roll. So, okay, so here I got my submit. On submit, we're just going to do submit form. And then our form, I didn't name my forms. That's a no-no. I'm going to go with form 1 just for time's sake for this demo. And then for cancel, we're going to do, and here's the thing, if you're doing this is going to be an exit. If you're doing a SharePoint form, it's request hide, because then, you're in the browser and it's tied to that form, that SharePoint list, ... But if you're doing the Canvas app, it's an exit, right? Because now you're exiting the application. And you have a parameter here that's like, do you want to log out the user? You say no. And then what we do is launch them to maybe like the home page or something like that. So if I'm going to do this launch, maybe I'll send them here for now. Let's copy this URL. So I'll send them here. And that just keeps them from going into the Power Apps app gallery, which is most of the time not a great experience. So once I hit submit, I can do submit form. I can send them to a confirmation page, or I can send them to this exact same address. And that's what the launch is. The launch is just like a redirect, okay? That's what that's going to do. All right, so now that that's done, let's go ahead and save this. A lot of misspellings and typos and things like that. Let's see. All right, so now we're going to save this, and then let's go to, let's try it out. So now if I go to Power Apps here, go to all my app settings, here's my Power App. And then here, I say, okay, what idea do you have? Let's just say, we had a really great idea last time. So we want to, search MS Team files within a team, right? And then take now, see, this is why you want that choice list. So here I have, let's just do MS Teams. We can solve for that. I have 1 or 2 options to solve for that. So here I'm gonna just submit, just make sure all of this works. It takes me to this list right here, which is fine. And if I go to my SharePoint, everything comes in as expected. That's the beauty of this solution. The first entry came in through a Microsoft form. The second entry came in through an Power App, because unlike what we're used to with InfoPath, Nintex forms, K2 forms, or whatever, where there is usually a one-to-one, here you can have many inputs dumping into a SharePoint list, and then once it's in this list, now you can get extremely creative and say, okay, when we receive these new ideas, I need to execute step 1, step 2, step 3 within my Power Automate, right? And notify internal people who are actually in charge of these, managing these ideas and things along those lines. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes sense. The other thing we want to cover within this session is to empower apps. Here's another great question that came in. And we can use the same list. So in Power Apps, the question was, how do we create multiple forms based on the different views, right? So here we have a Canvas app. We have a MS form for this. Let's create a Power App custom form. And this would be the third entry into this exact same list. And this scenario is really good because now you have someone who's an admin or who's a manager of all these Power App ideas, and they may want to interact with these items one by one, maybe set the status. There's an idea, okay, this is queued up to be used next, or whatever the case may be. Because when we create a Power Form, that's what I like to call it, is the Power Apps that customize the SharePoint list form, you get this special SharePoint integration component, which is really, really awesome. With this SharePoint integration, what it does and if we launch the list, let me go to my data source and click edit. This will take me right to my list. That SharePoint integration helps me determine when I click on a new item, and that way, if I want, and I'm gonna show you how to do this quickly, I can get a different experience for creating something new. I can give you a different experience within Power Apps when you're viewing an existing item, as well as a different experience when you're actually editing the different items. So those are 3 modes that this Power App is going to provide for us, and the SharePoint integration is the hook that makes that happen. So if I go to, let's say this guy here, I think I lost my way. Which one of these is my integration? Here we go. So if I go to this integration, and if I look on this drop down, I have an on edit. And here what I can do, I can set a local variable which tells me that this is edit mode. So what I'm gonna do a set var, and this is something I always do. And then there is already an enum that we can use. So this is edit. So I'm gonna set this to form mode edit. So anytime that I need to say, okay, am I in edit mode, or am I in a new creation mode, or are they just viewing this, I have this variable that's going to give me that answer, and then I can adjust my logic accordingly. So another thing that I can do when I'm in this edit mode, I can actually navigate the user to a different screen designed for capturing edit information, right? So let's grow into that. So the first thing I want to do is just keep dropping this in or setting this variable for my other scenarios. So here I got a new, let's just set that here, and then set this to form new. And then here I have a view, same scenario, set this to form mode view, okay? Now that I have that, let me rename my screen. So my first screen, I'm gonna use this for form, screen new. And again, my naming convention, and this is just me personally, I love to prefix my name with the type of element or component I'm dealing with. So in this case, this is going to be form new. Now let me do this. Let me build this up, because it will save you a lot of time if you build this up and say, okay, this is the information I'm gonna grab. So when they're filling out the new, this is going to be very similar to what we did with the previous, to where you have the name, the email, and you grab all that from the current user and ... right? And you make this edit mode. I'm not going to replay that because we just did it, and you get the gist. So I'm gonna have all of that here, and then we're ready to rock and roll. Now here's another thing: when I'm dealing with a Power Form, I don't necessarily have to put in my submit and cancel buttons, because I know in this context they're going to have that available to them out of the box. So I can just leverage that, or I can do, you see what they do out of the box, you have save and cancel in the form ribbon that's going to be provided to you regardless. But in the Power App form, I can do something very similar to what they've done here. So just keep that in mind. So now that I'm in, let me kill, I keep losing my spot and it's slowing us down. Let me kill some of this real quick. All right, so now let's go, let's just go with them, just for the sake of time. We're gonna go with these fields. So now what we can do, I can duplicate this screen, and this is gonna be my edit screen. Now in my edit screen, I can bring in other information available. So let me do this. So let me do this screen edit, and then just do this one as form edit. Right? And now what I can do, I can now bring in, for this particular form, I can bring in additional information. So maybe I want to highlight who created this request and when it was created, as well as the last time it was modified. And maybe I can, and not only, and this information only makes sense when the item has been created already, meaning that you're editing an existing item, right? So here I can add this information. Now I can do something very fancy. I can make this form a 2-column. Look at the flexibility that we have now. I can set the column layouts for this based on if it's a new item or an existing item, you're trying to modify it. I can also come in here and very easily change the ordering of these fields, right? So let me collapse everything. And let's just say this was created on this date and it was created by this person. The description is going to be below that. Modify is along with these guys here. So I want to do something like that. And then I want to have the full name, email. Maybe I can, now I want to display these instead of edit. I want to do those in read-only mode, right? Because we already have that information. There's no sense of changing it. And then maybe the description, we want to change that. And I don't have a status, so maybe we add that now. So let's go to edit the data. Let's create a new column. Let's call it status. And again, this is what my administrators are going to be using to modify this. So let's just say submit it and in progress. And then let's say complete it, right? And then the default value is going to be submitted. So now I can save this information off. And now if I go back here, hit refresh here so it recognizes the new column, and then come in, add the field. Let me see, status, there's my status field there. And then that's going to be good to go, right? So now I do this. I want this to expand out. I need more real estate for technology and description. So all I have to do is double this number, and that's going to give it the entire row. The same is true for technology. Double that number, and then you're going to have the status field here. And again, I can position these any way I want. The other thing is what I tend to do is that anything that's read-only, I love to change the background color to something that helps insinuates its read-only status, right? And then I'm going to run into an issue with that text box, but I can show you an easy way on how to solve for that, right? So there we go. So now with these text boxes, they come over with a default color of white. What I want to do is just knock that to transparent so it picks up the background color, right? So now I just make that transparent. So now if I change this background color, I'm not always chasing my tail with having to remember to change that text box. That's why the transparent really comes into play. This was gray, right? So now we have that. So again, now you can see the benefit of having an edit separate from the new, because I'm displaying more information. I'm I'm giving different treatment of different information. I have a different, grid system for this, so on and so forth. So now that we have this, now I'm going to show you, and then obviously you can go out and create one for view. So now how do you navigate to these? And it's very simple, and that's why the SharePoint integration is important in this scenario. So on view, watch this. I'm going to actually send them to, navigate them to the edit screen, right? And on edit, I'm going to send them to the edit screen. And then on new, I'm going to send them to the new screen. Right? And then we do new here. That's my new screen. And then we have this information there. Okay, so now what I want to do, let me save this off, and we'll test this out. And if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section. And then we will, I promise you, to address them, especially if they're easy to do. If not, I'll follow up. So now that we have here, let's just go back to our screen here, go to new. And this usually costs a couple of refreshes for our Power App form to kick in. And looks like it's kicking in now. So this is new. And then again, shame on me for asking for information that I already know. Right, and we can easily solve for this. And then obviously we would want to update this to be a drop down, and then we hit save. So that's going to grab that information. So now if I look at the existing one, That's the look and feel. Again, this kind of put me in administration mode, meaning that I'm trying to fulfill this request, or I'm tracking these requests that if they're in progress or whatever the case may be. And then if I go to edit mode, I can now modify this information. Wait, so if I view this, no, this is not right. This is not right. If I view this, I should only see. I think we missed a critical feature here. Yeah, this should be read only. I shouldn't be able to change any of this, and that's the reason why I was able to save or use that same form. So let's go back. No, I think I understand what happened. And this is another critical piece because we gloss over, especially the ones that are defaulted in for us, we tend to gloss over those. So let's look at our view. Notice what's happening. This view form is making, and the view form is what makes the mode read only for that particular form. But notice how it's not looking at my edit screen, right? Because I didn't set it up to manipulate edit. So now what I want to do, I want to do form edit, set that into read only mode when I go to view. And now this makes me think if I should set the other ones. And in edit mode, I need to set my form edit into edit mode, which seems to work. I think that's the default setting. And then for new, this is right because that's the screen that we started out with. All right, so now if I save this off, that was a good point. I'm glad that failed because I glossed over that and I failed to mention that, and that's key. All right, so here we got, so now we were here. Now if I hit refresh, this is what I was expecting. So you notice how I clicked on that item. I can't modify this. Then I go into edit. Now I can modify that. That's perfect. And if I go into new, all the created by, edit by, all the information is gone. I'm really focused on this information here. So this is exactly what you can do to do a multi. I don't know what you call that. I don't know if that's a multi-screen. I don't think that would be the best way to describe it. Because even without that functionality, I may have a multi-screen, especially in a wizard-driven type scenario. This is what I would call probably a multi-mode strategy. Multi-mode meaning that in new mode, I want to present a certain experience. In edit mode, I want to present a certain experience. And in view mode, I may want to present a certain experience, right? So this is what I would consider a multi-mode scenario. Hey, Marsha, Kwame, and Andre, and Adrian, sorry, Adrian. So Marsha's asking, using Power Automate Desktop, I was able to get to a point where the files was downloaded from the website and couldn't figure out a particular folder for the downloads folder. Now, very good question. I personally haven't had a chance to play around with Power Automate Desktop. I have it installed, but and my whole thing is, one of the things I really wanted to do, and you see this La Rosa, this is a very popular pizzeria here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And what I've been trying to do for a while now, like I even updated this, scrapped it, started from scratch, is to get this thing to place an order off of their website, right? So like, and I went with the screen recorder option, and for the life of me, I couldn't get it to work. I don't know. So I'm not that well versed in here. I'm still kicking the tires on this one. So I'm probably not the best person to ask the question on this one. Now, there are some, when you talk about training and learning, my first recommendation will always be to go to Microsoft Learn and then go to Power Automate Desktop or even RPA, right? And then here, so I'm in Docs. I don't know if this is the Learn. Yeah. So in here, I tend to leverage these more so than not for several reasons. One, these are going to be more up to date because, Microsoft has an army of trainers and they tend to keep these up to date. From my experience, unless you kind of went through it, like pretty similar to what you're going through, where you're kicking the tires, you kind of ran into a wall, and now you go here to add context. These trainings are very valuable in that way because I think they forget that some people are starting at the very beginning and they don't add a lot of context around the things that they're asking for, even when they're getting started, right? It just seems like, it almost seems like a lot of the Microsoft engineers and product managers and trainers and all the other stuff are too close to the tree to see the forest. And I say that in the sense that they just assume so much because they're just engulfed in it and they're in here every day and working with this technology every day that they forget the mindset of someone who's looking at this for the very first time. So if you kick the tires on this and try to figure it out yourself, and then you run into the wall, this training becomes that much more valuable. Outside of that, the other recommended training would be YouTube. That's what I do. I probably consume more YouTube videos than I do produce or expose. And I'm even on the road and whatever, like anything that's Power Automate recent, right? I'm always sorting by the recent stuff because I don't want to land into a Power Automate desktop from a year ago and, the things that have been worked out or the new strategies and patterns are not considered. And that can send you down the wrong rabbit hole, right? Or a rabbit hole, which is something you try to avoid anyway. So I would definitely do Microsoft Learn. I definitely do YouTube. I really can't vouch for anything else. I can't vouch for Pluralsight. I can't vouch for I can picture the site, but I can't, or even LinkedIn Learn or any of the other subscription learning sites, right? Because they tend to be several months, if not years behind what was currently happening. And they tend to attract the professors who are white paper professors, meaning that they just read this stuff and regurgitate that in a training format. And that's like the worst training, right? You really want to find someone who's a practitioner and who's actually using this stuff that can help you navigate the tips and tricks and is also the minefield that's out there. Because using these tools to, and I'm staring at the camera and I just realized you guys can't see me, but using these tools to solve for business requirements in real world business scenarios is a much different approach than the tool can do this, so let's make up this fictitious scenario on how to use the tool. Because what they tend to do is to highlight the benefit and some of the key features or the best features that the tool is designed to. And most of the time, that's a misalignment of the requirement that you're trying to solve. Sorry, I can't help on this. This is one of the things, like Power BI and Power Automate Desktop are the two that I'm very green in, and I'm trying to get to the point where I'm comfortable as I am with Power Apps, SharePoint, Power Automate, and Microsoft Teams. What if you want to generate a ticket number for each user? That's actually a fantastic, Adrian, that's a fantastic question. So generating a ticket number, let me show you this. I use this a lot, and it's not intuitive, but let me show you some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. So to generate a ticket number or any other number, you have two options, and I tend to recommend against the first one. The obvious one, and this is the one that people kind of jump to initially, is that you go to my Power Deals, idea request. This is the wrong site, isn't it? Yep. Wait, what in the world? I'm missing everything. Here we go. So I go to, most people would jump to this, right? So let me show high items and then show this ID. Most people would jump to this auto-generated ID. And this seems weird, right? Because you're going to send them a request like, oh, thank you, your confirmation or your ticket number is 2, right? Which is something like, okay, what is that? And I don't like this because for whatever reason, if you have to back up and restore this, these IDs do not come with that restoration. Every time you drop this, like you can maintain everything else. You can maintain the timestamp, the created date, the modified date, the modified user. You can maintain all that from backup and restore, but you can't maintain the ID, right? So that's one thing to be aware of, and that just comes from blood, sweat, and tears. So what I tend to do is what you're really asking for, which I think is fantastic, is I will create a ticket number column, and notice that I'm using single line text, even though I'm expecting the number, and that just allows you to kind of grow into this. If you want to use a number, you can. There's no, before I stayed away from them, only because this feature here, where is it? Where's the feature? Oh, I have to turn it to a number. This feature here was not available. The number, no, what used 1,000 separator. This was not a thing in the past. And I hate it when I use number and I got a number that was in the thousands or in the millions or whatever number of digits you use, and it threw that comma in there, and it was just one of the things that I hated, and you get business users complaining about it, so on and so forth. But now that we have this feature, I'm super okay with using number. So let's just use number, right? So I'm okay with using number. So now what I would do in Power Automate, or Power Apps, sorry, I would generate a random number, right? So here what I would do on my new request, and again, I will only do this in new. I would generate this number. So let me do a refresh. And here, right here on new, I will set a variable. So let's just set var ID to random. Now I forget how this works. So this is, let's just say random. This does something weird, like set a decimal point or something like that. We'll read it out and see exactly what we're getting here. So let me just set this to random, and let me put this on the screen so we can see it. So let me just drop in a temporary text label, and let's just set that to var ID. Right, and this is going to be random every time that I create an item. And unfortunately, unlike the app start, right, where I can run an app start. Actually, I can move this. Let me do this until we tweak it and get it down to where we want. Let's just use app start to execute this. So on start, set this to a random number, and then now what I can do, I can execute that using this. Yeah, there we go. So now I can see it. I can't do this with the on integration, so I have to save it, go to the website, refresh, make some tweaks, But here I can see this in real time and execute this. Now here's the issue that we have, as you see in here. I have that decimal point in there, and that's not something we want. And I want to say this number changes. Like I don't always get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 characters to the right of the decimal point. I think that varies as well. But anyway, so now that I know what I'm dealing with, what I would do is set this random ID to, the first thing I would do is convert it to text, because this does return a number. And once I convert it to text, I can then do a sub. This is complaining because I have the set var ID in 2 spots. And in one area, I'm setting it to a number. In another area, I'm setting it to a text value. And that's what it was complaining. It didn't like that. So here I do set text. So let me see, var ID. I want to do a substring. What is the substring method? What is the substring method? It's, oh boy, left. I think it's left, yep. So here left, here's my text. This is why I converted to a text, because my left is looking at that. Actually, I went right. I want to do the other way. So I'm going to go on the right side of that decimal. get the text value, and then I want to get the first random 5 characters, right? And if you wanted to, because we are dealing with a number column type, I can then convert that back to a number. And I think I'm missing my parentheses. Okay, so now we do that. I can look at this now and execute it and hit run. And that's my random ticket number. Nice and clean, no decimal point, dot, 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 and we're ready to rock and roll. So now the other question is, okay, how do I get that into my ID? So now if I go to my data source, hit refresh, because we added a column, I want to go ahead and bring this guy in. So let me switch to my form, click edit, hit add field, and then go to ticket number. Put that there. And again, I don't want my users to interact with this. So first thing I'm gonna do is unlock it, set its, okay, so here we gotta be careful. And this is why this is a great question. So here we gotta be careful because, no, we don't have to be careful. We can be loosey-goosey. We can be loose on this one because this form will only show up when I'm in new mode. So I'm never considering what is the current value in the site column for this item because it's brand new. So I can blindly go ahead and reset that and set this to my var ID, and I'm ready to rock and roll. Like, I'm done, right? And because we have that logic in here that says, okay, on new, navigate to new, but on edit, go ahead and do X, Y, Z, there's certain conditions I can expect on the new that I don't have to consider for the other scenarios for view and edit, right? And that's the other magic with that type of navigation. Okay, so now that that's set and I'm happy with that, let me take this out of my on start because I just use that for development, go to my on new, and then just paste that in because now that we kind of worked out all the kinks, right? So now if I save this, oh, let me do another thing. Let's show that the ticket number in the another view. So here, let's do ticket number. Again, let's just make this read only. So let me go ahead and grab that. Go to ticket number, add that in, and position that into the right position. So here, let me grab this and go to maybe right here, right? What happened? What am I? That's not nice. That wasn't nice. That wasn't nice at all. Why did my first name and last name jump like that? Okay. All right. So now we got that. And we know how to solve for this, right? So the first thing we want to do is make this read only, which I failed to do. So here I'm going to tell it I just want to view the text. Fine. The other thing is I want this gray to match everybody else. Fine. And I want this to have its own column. Fine, right? Everything we've done already. Now, this is not acting nice, so let me touch it a little bit. There we go. A little touch, put it right where it needs to be. All right, so now I have this tick number. It's take up the whole row so that way I can keep everything else in pairs the way I kind of like it. So now let me just save this off. And of course, all the previous tickets that are previous ones that didn't have tickets, they won't have it, but all my new ones will have one. Now, I'm going to lose a little bit because on my Microsoft form, if I do that ticket number, that's going to be interesting. Yeah, so in that Microsoft form scenario, I will have to, because I embedded this inside of the Power App, my Microsoft form scenario is not going to get a ticket number. So I'm going to have to tuck that away inside of my Power Automate. So here I have my ticket number. Again, I can make this read only, which you should do. You shouldn't allow them to modify that. But it would be great if you showed it. Oh yeah, and this is residue. I forgot to hide it, but we get the gist, right? So here I put a name, description, email, hit save. And now that ticket number is saved. If I click edit, ticket number is maintained. Now notice what we did, and I kind of brushed through that. The random logic, we made sure it only happened in one scenario, and that's when you're creating it. all my other scenarios, because I created and save it in the column, now it would be treated like a regular value. They should not be changing this, and now it would be static post the new scenario, right? And that's the beauty of that pattern. All of that is baked into. Now, because of this particular scenario, because I do have a Microsoft form capturing this information, as well as a Power form capturing this information, as well as a Canvas app, I would need to put those randoms in those other scenarios. And that's usually a flag. If I'm doing the same thing in 3 different areas, there's probably a way it's like, oh, here's an opportunity for me to dynamically generate that. And that's where I would probably tuck that into a Power Automate. So in the Power Automate, I will allow those 3 scenarios to put data here. And then once the item is created, have that trigger a Power Automate, generate a random number in Power Automate, save it to the ticket number field, and then send a confirmation out, right? So if I do that, what I would have to do, good, I didn't put a confirmation here. And this is my Microsoft form scenario. So I don't want to do a confirmation here. I want to wait until it hits the list and then create another Power Automate that says when a new item is added or created. And I love that scenario. Again, here's the whiteboard. You guys thought you were going to escape it today. No, no, no. Every session, there's an opportunity for a whiteboard. Let me just highlight this real quick. Come on. It's waking up. Someone's on vacation. All right, so here we go. I don't know. I mean, do you want to use a sequence? I think you kind of have that sequence baked in already, right? So the question is, instead of a random generated number, shouldn't you want to use a sequence? But I kind of have that sequence, right? Because the number, understand the scenario. It's a good question because it makes you start to think like, how would you use it, and really try to dig in on how are we using this random number, right? So think of the scenario, and I'm gonna put these side by side. The sequence says this is the order that this item was created, right? And this is, where this fits in the whole scheme of things as far as number of items, which one is first, second, X, Y, Z. Ticket number in this scenario is just a unique number that the requester and everybody can hinge their hat on that says, instead of saying, oh, no, I was talking about the Power App request that said, can you search on files within Microsoft Teams, way verbose, versus, no, I'm talking about the Power App solution idea, ticket number 33519. It's just a unique item to identify this. Whereas the sequence from an admin perspective could say, oh, you're number 4, and I'm working with a request where the ID is 50. I know historically where you fit in that journey of 1 through 50, right? And that's more of an admin thing. Whereas from a requester, they really just need a unique number to easily identify the request. Okay, that would be that. Oh, whiteboard. Okay, you almost talked me out of the whiteboard. No, we're doing whiteboard, friend. Okay, so here we go. Here's my Microsoft form. Here's my PA Canvas app. Here's my PA SharePoint form. All of these are going into my SharePoint list, right? So here we have my list. Now, I love this decoupled scenario because if there's something special I need to do with MS Forms, I'm going to do it here. If there's something special I need to do with the Power App Canvas app, I'm going to do it here within Power Apps. If there's something special I need to do with the Power App form, I'm going to do it here within the Power App form. Everything's going to be tattooed, ready to go, and then I'm going to drop it here. Anything that's centralized that I need to do, regardless of how those items came in, I'm going to do it post item created in the Power Automate that's listening to that. I have so many hooks that I can use depending on the scenario. This is why I love this pattern, right? Because it gives me the control needed for each scenario, and it gives me the common ground needed for all scenarios, right? And now I can rock and roll and do other fancy stuff.
Awesome. No problem, Adrian. Okay, so any questions? Awesome. Thanks, Marsha. I'm just catching up. Sorry, guys. Recommendation training. Jacqueline. So Power Automate desktops need to have flow to check. Oh, yeah, we talked about that. Jacqueline. Thank you. Appreciate candor. Great. Instead of random. We talked about that. Lewis. Code Affection. Hi, can I get a SP online as a free subscription, 1 month, 2 month, etc.? Is Power Desktop free as well? Which subscriptions need to select? Very, very good question. So the question is, can I get a free subscription so I can test this out? And Microsoft does make this available. So if you don't have this, and I'm going to drop this in the chat, do a Google search on Developer Program Microsoft 365. Now, the whole caveat behind this is that you're using this for development only, right? Let me drop this in the chat. And you're not using this as a production instance in the sense that you're trying to run a company off of this dev program. That's what they're trying to combat, like abuse. Now, this is the most beautiful thing since sliced bread. Right. So here it's prompted me to log in, and let me try that URL. Let me try this URL from incognito mode, because I want to show you the actual experience and how you can get around certain things, because it does prompt you for an Office 365 credential. Right? When you click on join, it's going to say, okay, log in with your 365 credentials. Now, you have a couple options here, right? One option could be you can log in with your organization account. Now, this is a one-time deal, right? This is just saying, okay, I'm releasing, this is Microsoft saying, I'm giving you this dev program, this dev tenant, and you get 25 seats and you get E5 licenses, which is different from the one that I actually showed you that I'm using with the Tesla, because the Tesla is only E3. Not only do they give you 25 seats in E5, which is probably one of the highest enterprise licenses that you can test with and kick the tires with, they also have a service to where they would generate those users for you, right? So they would give, because I spent a lot of time creating all of my fake users in that Tesla tenant. And thank goodness I have a pretty large family, so it was easy for me to come up with names and all the other stuff. But if you don't want to go through that, like profile pictures and everything, like I went full ham on it. But here, they actually have a way to where they would generate all that for you. So your 25 users, they would give them first name, last names. They would give them all the same password. So you would specify a password, and that makes it easy for testing and doing what you need to do. And they will also generate some fake email information, as well as meeting invites and stuff like that. It's actually really, really cool. So here, if you don't have one, so I'm not going to log in with a 365 account. So I'm going to just say test DeShon 0365. This is going to be nasty, actually. Yeah, this is actually nasty. You can do full vanilla and say, I'm not going to use any of my information. I'm not going to use my company information. I'm not going to use all this. I want to create something brand new. So here, let's just say DeShon 1 2 3 4 5 6 whatever, and they're going to create no way. There is no way in the world. How does someone already have that? Seriously? That's probably me, by the way. All right, so here I'm going to create a password. Now, notice what I'm doing. What I'm creating has nothing to do with, this is not my birthday, by the way, so don't send me birthday cards on September 12th. So this has nothing to do with your tenant. This is just setting up a account within Microsoft, so that way they can associate that to the dev tenant they're about to give to you. And this is the piece that can be confusing when you're going through this for the very first time. And that's why I'm so glad you asked this question, because this is something that I've been wanting to do forever, is show people this piece right here. So now that you have this, Um, Now you have to be careful. You have to be careful. Now what they're asking you, now that you set up that fake account just to get in the door, now it's going to say, now go ahead and set up your dev tenant. So here I'm going to tell them I'm from the United States, and they probably use this for their data center in the back end. But notice what's happening here. This company name is the company that you want to call your tenant, right? Not the company that you represent. It's like now you can get creative and say, okay, I want to call this Nike shoes, right? And then you just say accept terms and conditions, da 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 da. And once you do that, and they're asking, like, okay, what are you going to use this tenant for? And I'm going to say, okay, I'm doing this for personal projects. I'm surprised they don't have an option to say to learn, right? And then they ask you, and this is all marketing data, right? All these questions has no impact on your tenant at all, other than the fact it threw an error. All right, I don't know why that happened, but I'm trying to help you distinguish between, okay, let's call this something else. Let's call this DeShon Cupcakes or something. DeShon Cupcakes LLC versus infringing on brands and doing all the other messy things that I do. All right, so here let's just do that, and then let's quickly do that, and come on, give me a site. All right, so here we got welcome to the dev program. We all set, and then it's going to ask you to set up your E3 license. Now, you have, when we talk about learning, there's a ton here that you can tap into, and I actually forgot about this. So let's just say, let's go ahead and set up our E3 license, and now it's asking us for the main account and the domain. Now this is going to be the domain of your tenant. Now here I'm gonna call this DeShon Cakes or something like that, right? Now be careful here, because this is what your login becomes, right? And it's asking you for the password, and you want to remember this, because this is like the main password that gives you global admin access to your tenant. And then I'm gonna give it a fake number, because this is not MFA, so it can be fake. No, this is MFA. Yikes. Okay, I'm not putting my real number there. So you have to put in the real number, because it is MFA. Sorry, I misspoke. They're gonna send your code, and after that, you go through setup and all this other stuff. And after this screen, then you have a choice of options to say, okay, it's gonna tell you, say, hey, you got 25 seats. We can help you get started. Do you want us to do fake data for all 25, or you want to create them yourself? And then you say, yeah, I want to do that. And it takes probably like 10 minutes. Then after that, they come back and say, do you want us to create some fake email, transactions and meeting invites and stuff like that? And you can say, yeah. And then it goes, it's a beautiful thing. And once you have it set up, I actually set up a couple of these. It will look something like this. So this code camps is an example of that. And if I go into portal, and if I go into admin, and let me go into users and then active users, these are real. Those are not fake. I know by the names, because those are names of family members. So let me go to CNB. Let me try this one. So if I do portal, same deal. Nope. That's not an admin account. I'm striking out, guys. I'm off script. CMB D Clark. Let's try this one. Nope, that feels like the same one. CMB, no. Nope, that's not it at all. CMB Lab, maybe? Okay. Okay. Yeah, see, this is want you to verify your information, which is okay, right? I mean, if you don't do it, you see how you get harassed. Okay, I for some odd reason, I guess I did not do the that's weird. I thought I did that though. Isn't it weird I get the same names though? It's almost like it's anyway. But okay, so I didn't take advantage of the multiple accounts and stuff like that, and I don't know why I did not. But here you can see you have your E5s, and then when you click on this and just say, for example, if you go to license and apps, you will see that you get 25. So I got 19 left to play with, and my goodness, I mean, it's full featured. I mean, you get everything E5, and which is going to be very heavy in security and compliance. That's usually the big difference between the E3 and the E5 is what you can do here in the security and compliance, what you can do in Azure Directory. There's some fancy things like dynamic role membership for AD groups, which is a beautiful thing. Endpoint management, some other security stuff, so on and so forth. So you get the full gamut. And usually what I do, and you see this, right, in my Chrome profile, you create multiple profiles for those users, not necessarily for all 25, but to really test things out. That's what you're going to do. The recommendation is that you dedicate one of your accounts to be the global admin. Everybody else is whatever else you want to simulate. So if you just want to say, okay, maybe Ethan, I'm going to make him the SharePoint admin. And that way, when I log into Ethan as a SharePoint admin, I can tell what I can and cannot do to see. Very, very useful stuff. Another one is under the Compliance Center. How many of us will have access to the Compliance Center of our organization? Most of the time, that's like 0.002%, right? So only a few people will have that. Only a few people will have global admin access. But here, if I'm setting up DLP policies, retention policies, disposition policies, trying to see what the audit logs look like, the do's and don'ts there, the new cloud app security module, which is something brand new, what capabilities you have there. It allows you to kick the tires on all of that stuff. And that way, when those requirements present itself in your organization, you have a one-up to everybody else because you've been playing around with this in your own dev tenant, right? This is exactly where you can go to learn development for SPFX framework stuff, right? Create your, because you have full access to create your own sites, to authorize your API permissions. That's a key thing when you're dealing with graph API development, so on and so forth. I wouldn't recommend doing your real company development here. This is your personal project development. There's a distinction there, right? Because a lot of people, organizations are making the mistake of jumping into application lifecycle, setting up multiple tenants, and then fall into a rabbit hole when they try to promote information from one tenant to another tenant, and Active Directory is different, and all these other hoops they got to jump through. It's not really meant for that. But this is great for learning on your own. If you're trying to skill up and your organization is slow with moving to this technology, or your organization is here, but your access is very limited because of your role, because of the role that you're playing within the organization, this is a perfect scenario to where you can take a look up under the hood, learn about things that are managed by other groups, and really just start to get familiar with those pieces. So very, very cool. Very great question. Thanks for asking that one. Awesome. Awesome. All right. I think I got everyone's questions. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I think I actually have a ton more. I try to keep these, within the hour or 90 minutes. I don't want to start another topic because I don't know if we'll be able to finish it. I'm just looking at these updates and see if, here's one. I just learned about this week. This is from Reza, who I recommend. Reza and Paulie M. I've started to learn a lot from both of them and their channels. This is something Reza highlighted in a podcast that he was part of, and I did not know this, and this means everything. Here's the scenario. The scenario is say for example, we're back to our Power Apps idea list, and we need to do certain things based on the status. So we're going to create a Power Automate that's going to do more than just listen to when the item's created. We actually need to do something special when the item is modified. There's a feature in Power Apps. So here, if I do brand new automated, and here I'm gonna have to select the option when the item is created or modified, right? And I want to say, let me see, I don't know what to call this. Status check or something like that. Something generic, right? Or when the PA idea approved or completed, right? I want to fire this particular Power Automate when the idea is completed, meaning that we created a tutorial, the video's been posted on YouTube, and we're ready to rock and roll. So here we don't create, and this is going to be pretty straightforward, where we wire this guy up to listen to our site in our list, right? And then so when item was created, so then usually what I would do a condition here, and then say something like run flow or don't run flow or check the status and all this other good stuff. And most of the time, if it doesn't meet that condition, it just skips, right? Like, because that condition is like my door stopper, so to speak, to where I don't want it to mistakenly run anything else. But here's the trick. The trick is, if you go into this trigger and you go into settings, right here at the very bottom, look at this. This is beautiful. Trigger condition. And here I can, and this is the nasty part of it, because you have to understand the expression. So you have to build the expression. But basically here I can write in an expression that says, if the status equal approved, only trigger this flow when that status equals that value. Now, I still need to come in here to prevent it from, executing the approved state logic each and every time it's run. I can probably do something like here, like update the status. So if I do like update item here, so immediately after it triggers this, I'm gonna have to update this particular item to a different status that this is not listening to, so it doesn't, keep executing every time someone like change a item or something like that. So here, I can just, for this particular ID, the one that triggered it, I'm gonna change the status to maybe completed to done, which is too close to a synonym, but I'll figure it out, right? But it has to be something different than this guy here. This sets up a whole new world of possibilities, because now what we can do, we can, one, have way better control over our flows, and even in this scenario, have multiple flows listening to different statuses and executing logic based on that status in a much cleaner way, because now we don't have a series of conditions or even like a switch statement to execute. So that's one. The other one is that you can save on, and this was Rez's point, you can save on your flow calls. So here, let me just, actually, I don't want to save this. Do I? No. No, I don't want to save this. So the other one would be to save on your flow runs, right? Because most of us, we execute and try to stay in the guardrails of standard connectors or non-premium connectors, right? We don't want to be in a situation where we're creating solutions, but then because of the solution or the connector that we're using or how inefficient our solution is running, it's costing the company money. So in this scenario, we can control these flow runs to where, because your flow runs are metered, and there's no hard and fast rule of, like, there's a number that says you're only allowed this number of executions for this particular user within this particular time frame. There are numbers or metrics out there So you can save on minimizing that number, because without that conditional trigger, like say for example, if I go in here and I say, okay, I only want to execute, this is a bad example, but if it was created or modified, I only want to execute this when the status equals X, that flow without that condition gets executed for all the statuses, regardless if it's the one that you're waiting for or not. And that costs you, 4 or 5, depending on your process, that can cost you 4 or 5 runs for every status that you're expecting, right? But with that condition, it only triggers when that status meet your condition, and then you can save time and money, mostly money, for those conditions. And you can create a much better maintenance story, right? Because now I can create a flow that says PA ideas on submitted, PA ideas on completed, PA ideas on, whatever, or on hold, or whatever your other statuses are. And then you can keep those flows very clean and very concise for that particular status, and you don't have a hodgepodge of, here's the kitchen sink. If you're this status, and execute this track. If you're this status, execute this track. If you're this status, execute that track, which is what I've been doing. So now Reza kind of opened my eyes that says, no, you can set a condition on those triggers. It was very inviting. So I definitely wanted to share that with you all. So G Spoon, no problem, Jacqueline. G Spoon says, can you give advice on using Power Automate to provide an aging item in days? I cannot seem to find a good video for that. So Lewis is chapping in. So you can have a Power Automate write to Excel file line and calculate the aging with today minus, and then have your flow run and check every day to refresh your items. That's a great idea. I would hesitate moving to Excel, because I think everything you can do in Excel, you have access here. So that's actually a good idea. Let's explore something real quick. And then based off of this, I can probably give you some ideas. So if you go to new list, and if you go to issue tracker, and let's just use this template, right? Let's just let it do its thing. One of the fields in here is days old. It's this guy here, right? Let's see what they're doing here. So if we go to look at this guy, do I want to edit? Do I want to rename? What do I want to do? I want to edit. Days. So this must be a calculated field. Let's go behind the scenes here. So you have this days old calculated column, right? And let's see what expression they're using. Yeah, they're doing exactly what Lewis is saying, right? So they're taking the date, and then they're comparing that to today's date, and then that's how they figure out the age on it, right? So now that you have this, right, and you can just create that template, copy this formula. This is the same formula, and create as a calculated value. Now that you have this, what I would do is very similar to what Lewis is saying, is create a scheduled flow, right? Let's say check days old, and then hit create. And then you can run this. No, we're not running this every 5 minutes. You can probably run this once a day and be fine, right? Because the days old is going to change every day, right? And now you can do get items from SharePoint, and then go and get that from your list. So let's see, where are we? We are in the PA ideas, and we got our issue tracker. And then, so this is where it gets a little tricky. So here you want to do, I'm not going to do a filter, right? But ideally, you can do a filter that says where days old is greater than 10, right? And that's going to bring back only those items where the days old is greater than 10. But the tricky part is for the days old column, by it being a calculated field type column, there are certain things you can and cannot do based on that column type. And I don't know if OData query is one of them. Ideally, you would want to do a query so that way you don't have to loop through everything. So let's just say we're going to loop through everything, right? So I go back to this Power Automate. So, okay, I'm not going to put a filter on there. Give me everything. And now what you can do is put your conditioning here. And here's the other one, right? Will I be able to use a calculated value in the condition? So let me search on days old, right? Interesting. Why did this do apply to each? That's interesting. I don't know why it is doing this loop. I wouldn't want to do this loop, but let's just play this out and see how far it is. So if it's greater than whatever your logic is, 20. So any item that's older than 20, I need to do X, right? So and this is where you do a send email and XYZ, and you're able to rock and roll. So I'll just leave that up to you on how to fill that out. Now the concerning piece is this, and you want to run it to make sure that this is giving you what you expect. Now to avoid this having to be wrapped, like this entire thing had to be wrapped inside this apply each, what I would do, and this was my last video, I will initialize a variable. So initialize a variable. I don't know why that's taking forever. So initialize a variable and just call this day so, and then try to contain that apply each into this single variable versus your entire logic, right? So here I just assume this is going to be an integer, and then I'm gonna let that default to 0, and then here, let me just delete this whole thing. And then here, what I would do, I would just set this variable to to day so, right? And then if it's going to loop, allow it to loop. Like I still don't understand why it's looping. Oh, because I'm doing the collection. Never mind, because this is not a single item. So I'm getting all these items and I'm collecting through the days old for each one of them. Yeah, you need that collection. Yeah, you want to treat them one at a time. Sorry. Yeah, you want to treat them one at a time. You don't need this. I blanked out there for a second. So yeah, so here I want to do that condition. Put your day sold in here. If it's greater than 20, this is for every item in the collection, right? So if it's greater than 20, then do X. If it's not greater than 20, then it's not going to do anything, right? And then here you can do send an email, send a reminder, and whatever. The problem is it's going to be how often do you want to pester them, right? And what additional logic do you want to set? So not only do you say days old, you probably want another column that says time to remind again. And if the time to remind again, that's something that you can continue setting here that says, okay, I sent you a reminder today. This thing runs every day, so I'm not going to send you another reminder tomorrow. But every time I send you a reminder, I'm going to give you 5 days, and then I'm going to send you another reminder. That type of deal. That's probably the other condition that you would want to set here is that, okay, if you hit my threshold, when do I want to send you a reminder? Like how frequent do I want to send that reminder? And you can set that for every 5 days. So once you set this to yes, you update that send next reminder on and have that a date time field. And then this condition check, if the send reminder on or next reminder date is less than or equal to today's date, then they fall into that yes group again. So that's how you can do it. But yeah, there's some tricks to work out there. But I think the key piece is the fact that you do have calculated fields in SharePoint. Use that to do your calculation to give you the value. And then based on that, the results of that calculation, you can use that to determine your logic. Okay. All right. So hopefully that's helpful. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm gonna let you all go. Thanks again for joining, and we'll check with you. Hopefully, I think I can do, if my schedule permits. I think we can do next Saturday. I know we can't do the Saturday of July 4th. Taking that time off to recharge, but yeah, we can definitely do this again next Saturday. So I'll be able to submit a piece. All right. So see you next Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. Take care of yourselves. Talk to you soon.